Oath of office for promotional appointment of Nathan Hoover to the rank of, that's Nathaniel Hoover to the rank of police sergeant effective March 1st, 2020.
You go first. Sorry, I was budging.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Pleased to be here today to introduce you to Officer Nate Hoover, who began his career with the Moline Police Department on October 22nd, 2007, following graduation from Western Illinois University with a Bachelor of Science in Law Enforcement and Justice Administration. Nate served 2 years as the police liaison at John Deere Middle School and 1 year as the police liaison at Moline High School, followed by 2 years at the Community-Oriented Policing Unit at South Park Mall. He provided valuable training to new officers by serving as a field training officer for 5 years. He's also a member of the Crisis Containment Unit, a defensive tactics instructor, and has served on the Honor Guard for 5 years. He's a certified evidence crime scene technician and operator, as I said, for the Crisis Containment Unit. Over the past 13 years, Nate has shown exemplary professionalism, integrity, and leadership, receiving several letters of commendation from members of our community. And I'm confident that Nate will excel in his leading his unit as a sergeant. So at this time, I'd like to introduce you to Nate and his wife, Amanda. They have 3 children. Hayden, did I get this right? Hayden right here. Holden, there's Holden over here. And Hosea. Nope, he's stuck over there. So he's also joined tonight by his parents, Joyce and Donald Hoover, and his mother-in-law, Pam Franzen. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the mayor for the oath of office.
Stand on this side so more people can see your face. Would you please raise your right hand? I, Nathaniel W. Hoover,
I, Nathaniel W. Hoover,
having been duly promoted to the rank of Sergeant of the Police Department
having been duly promoted to the rank of Sergeant of the Moline Police Department
for the City of Moline, Illinois,
for the City of Moline, Illinois,
do solemnly swear that I will support the constitutions of the United States
do solemnly swear that I will support the constitutions of the United States
and the State of Illinois,
and the State of Illinois,
will strictly adhere to the compiled statutes of the State of Illinois,
will strictly adhere to the compiled statutes of the State of Illinois,
the Moline Code of Ordinances,
the Moline Code of Ordinances,
and any Illinois rules of professional conduct applicable to police administration,
and any Illinois rules of professional conduct applicable to police administration,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the rank of Sergeant of the Police Department
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the rank of Sergeant of the Moline Police Department, or Police Department,
for the City of Moline, Illinois,
for the City of Moline, Illinois,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. And thank you for You're gonna keep one tonight. And everybody's gonna wanna shake your hand, so we'd like to get a picture.
So Nate, it's my honor to pin your sergeant stripes on your collar. Congratulations. And I'd like to invite your wife to pin on your sergeant badge. Congratulations. Feel free to come up and take some photos.
Sergeant, congratulations.
Congrats a lot. Captain.
I thought you were going. Picture time. Picture time. Talk to Skippy about number 1. Yeah. Into the
Do you wanna do the whole family? We do the whole family?
You sure? Did you get me in the photo?
Okay.
It's kind of cool. I don't know how it's all going to
Look at it.
but the idea is
Switches around periodically.
Do I have to do this?
we're talking about, because these guys were here before.
Okay, you can do that.
I'm like, the only thing that makes me feel good, because usually I can sit my friend and say, who's going to steal it? No one's going to steal that thing.
I don't blame you. This part gets really boring.
Come on, you guys can stay.
So we're going to take a brief recess out of our committee of the whole meeting and go into a public hearing. It's the public hearing for Illinois Bicycle Path Grant. At 6:00,
No,
what?
sorry, did I do something? Oh, yeah.
Can I do that?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. We're going to restart. At 6:07 PM, the committee of the whole meeting will be suspended for a public hearing. Anyone wishing to be heard at this public hearing should sign in on the sign-up sheet in the foyer and will be given 3 minutes to speak. I would like to invite the land development manager to bring the sign-up sheet from the foyer to the clerk.
Forgot to
Did we
ask
do all
Ryan
that?
to do it. Yes, but I
Ryan?
forgot to ask him.
I'd like to invite you to do that now.
Thanks, Ryan.
Isn't this, we're really well rehearsed.
You have a really good clerk.
And here's gracefully being brought up.
And let it be so.
Okay, the public hearing for the Illinois Bicycle Path Grant is now open. City Planner Jeff Anderson, would you like to proceed?
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
As the mayor noted, this is a public hearing for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Illinois Bicycle Path Grant Program 2021, in regards to the city's proposal and intent to submit a grant application for the development of a bike path in the 7th Street corridor between 52nd Avenue and just south of John Deere Road. For the record, I would like to add that there was the required public notice published at least 7 days in advance of this hearing, and that is on record if anybody cares to inspect that. So with that, I would invite the public to provide any comments, questions, or testimony they would like to make as part of the public hearing. And it may be a good time now. I just had 2 further comments to mention. In regards to going through the environmental assessment that is required for submittal of the grant application, there are 2 items. I think they're probably remote, but wanted to mention them to you that came up in the environmental review. It is within the realm of the possible that there could be an archaeological survey, phase 1 required. And if it was to be required, that would be the cost of the cities to bear. I spoke with the state archaeologist at the State Historic Preservation Office. They indicated that they did not think it would be required given the level of development that's occurred in this area. But he said that decision-making process would actually start within DNR, so it may not be his decision ultimately. If we did get into a phase 1, he estimated, give or take, $5,000 to conduct that, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. The other item is that in the wetlands survey, the National Wetlands Maps from Fish and Wildlife Service identified emergent wetlands in the proximity of the bike path. Upon inspection, it's just turf there, and there may have been wetlands in the past, and there's a small wetland patch on the east side of the road proximate to the Hy-Vee store. So I don't think that will be an issue, but if somebody determined that there were wetlands of sufficient priority to mitigate, that may be another thing to consider. Again, I think that's an extremely remote possibility, and applying does not require the city to enter into an intergovernmental agreement if this did move forward. So with all that said, I'll be quiet, and if anybody has comments or questions.
So there was no one that signed up to make public testimony. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Are there any questions of the speaker from the council? Discussion? Motion? Are they supposed to make a motion?
No.
Right, did you invite him to make a motion? Okay. Anything else? There being no further testimony, the public hearing is hereby closed. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
We are now going to withdraw from recess. And we're gonna go back into the committee of the whole agenda. So are there any questions on the agenda this evening? There is one Scrivener's error that I'd like to draw your attention to. On number 3, the amount to be approved should be $520,000. The accompanying Council Bill 1016-2020 is accurate. So we'll begin with the agenda items. Item number 1, Chapter 35 Amendment to the Moline Code of Ordinances, 5000 Avenue of the City's rezoning. Ryan Berger, Land Development Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a rezoning request for the movement of a B3 to a B4 at 5000 Avenue of the Cities. This is the old Kmart building. Under the current B3 zoning, outdoor storage is permitted within sales and services, outdoor display land use. However, the applicant is proposing indoor storage units and also mini warehouse storage units in the parking lot. The indoor storage land use is not permitted in the B3 zone, but is permitted in the B4. The use of the previous Kmart site is functioning as a big commercial box, which is similar to other properties zoned as a B4. I've also provided you with some zoning maps, just so you have an idea of what properties are currently B4 in the city. That would be, I think it's the kind of the dark red compared to the maroon. Recently, the council and the mayor approved the Avenue of the City's corridor plan, and within that plan, this specific site was discussed. In response, U-Haul is providing 2 outlet locations facing Avenue of the Cities in their site plan that they've submitted to the city. Also, they are proposing a bike repair station to encourage the shared use between pedestrian, bikes, and transit, which is outlined in that particular plan. So staff recommends approval. Thank you.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Alderman Schoonmaker. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Alderman Parker. Are there any questions or discussion on this item? Alderman Schoonmaker.
Ryan, aren't they also putting in, maybe you said that and I missed it, but you talked about the bike repair station, but isn't that sidewalk gonna be changed to a bike-friendly, push it further away from Avenue of the Cities? Wasn't that part of the discussion?
That may have been a part of the discussion. I do believe that we talked about a sidewalk at its standard width.
Okay.
U-Haul the discussions with them have been positive and they've been pretty open to suggestions that we have. So if that's something that the council would like to see.
I thought they brought that up, that they were gonna put in, they asked about a wider sidewalk. You remember that? I think you were there the day we talked with them.
I remember talking about a few different things there, but I mean, unless it's
Okay.
actually in writing somewhere, I mean, that's probably the understanding of the council how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman
I-
Parker. Oh, sorry.
And I just will point out, like, that those types of negotiation points, while they seem related to the rezoning, aren't necessarily related. Does that make sense? So we can't put any conditions based on this rezoning. It just
Got it.
needs to be a complete rezoning.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to speak to the, kind of what you were saying, they seem to have a very high level of cooperation. They seem to want to be friendly with the city and how they interact and be, you know, they've already put up fencing for the neighbors and I think they've been pretty proactive in their approach.
Alderman Parker.
In reviewing this, at the planning commission, it was not a unanimous vote. Can you share with me and the rest of the council, what kind of conversation took place there?
I think a part of the concern was that with the rezoning, once the rezoning is complete, or if approved, it is what it is, and then they would have particular rights. And we do not have a mechanism that would put conditions on them to say, well, we provided you with this rezoning, but where is the bike pump? Where are the outlots that we discussed? With the current rezoning, it's only based on the relation to the comprehensive plan, if this particular site itself makes sense as a B4, not necessarily the negotiations that U-Haul is willing to do.
Thank you.
Alderman Nguyen.
I think in light of that, From my perspective, I'm not in favor of the rezoning of this property, but I think I would be open to sending it back to Plan Commission with direction of possibly them going through the PUD process for a planned urban development, which then would allow for things like that, that says as a condition for getting this PUD, the Plan Commission could make certain requirements. I'll be honest, I'm not super excited about Avenue the City's looking over and seeing storage sheds that are built up and those sorts of things. And so I'm not in favor of this rezoning because I don't want to see those either. But at the same time, as Alderman Schoonmaker talked about, if they're willing to work with us, the PUD process seems like the most advantageous so that we get and make sure we get what we want. And if they're flexible enough to work with us, then I think that that's would be a win-win for everyone.
I have a question. If the planning commission is interested in rezoning it, why, other than we had someone request it, why is that the best use for that property? You know, considering we're landlocked, why wouldn't we rezone it for residential and then gain that advantage?
That's a possibility. No one had requested to rezone it as residential, so they only hear the case that's before them.
I see. Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions before we go to vote? Alderman Moyer.
So, you can see that,
Correct.
this drawing, this is the drawing that we should know what I'm talking about, the drawing that's part of the packet that shows the different buildings. None of that's legible. So I'm trying to understand where the restaurant fits into all this and.
Right, so they're creating this new outlet here. It's identified kind of in that purple facing Avenue of the Cities. So that would be a new lot that they would potentially sell to a developer to have something else instead of just all of that parking lot, something else to activate.
So they would tear down
Corridor.
the building that.
It would be next to the building that's currently there. So they're gonna be leasing that out to another business.
So just to clarify though, we don't have any levers with them. Once we rezone it, they can do whatever they want.
Right, and I think that's the question with the plan commission and the points that were made. Another option is, and I'm not that familiar with the PUD process because I haven't done one here, but some communities use special use permits for those types of intricate negotiation deals. So that's another option if that first we get into it and that doesn't work. For example, you can come up with another mechanism to have some sort of conditions based on negotiations.
But we would want to do that before we rezoned.
It would be instead of,
Instead,
but
okay.
yes.
So,
Alderman Burr.
so currently, that purple area that we're talking about that Alderman Moyer showed you, they could actually just line up all their trucks there and there's nothing we could do, correct?
After the rezoning, correct.
Alderman Nguyen.
Quick question is just as far as process. If we deny the rezoning tonight, they paid a fee for the rezoning, which was
$650.
$650. And if they then decided to come back and do the PUD or the special use or those sorts of things or variance, they would then have to pay another fee to start the process. So in light of that, what I'd like to do is to, what I'd like to do is amend the motion to approve by giving direction to send this back to the Plan Commission to review without an additional fee charged to them to make a determination on whether the PUD process or some other process that gives some more teeth to and yeah, we'll just leave it at that.
Alderman Nguyen, I think that feels kind of like the opposite of the motion because you're motioning to deny.
No, well, because if we vote to deny, then they lose their $600. And so what
We
I'm.
wouldn't be
I'm
able to
moving-
come up with a second motion to apply that $600 to a different,
Yes, but I think that the idea here is basically to table it or to refer it to committee, back to committee to, I mean, in parliamentary procedure, it would be to refer to committee and
why
with
don't
that
you make
direction.
that motion
Okay,
instead?
then I make a motion that we refer it to committee without additional fees.
And by committee, you mean commission?
Yeah,
The planning commission?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Alderman Went to refer to planning commission and a second by Alderman Parker. Is there any discussion on that? Alderman Burke?
So then will the commission bring it back to us again?
Oh, yeah, it'll still have to come back to us after they re-review it.
Anybody else? All those in favor of that motion that Alderman Went just made, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So that motion carries. And so the other one is tabled until it comes back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And do you want to, as a council, give them some direction on what the timing is before we would expect to come back? Or is it indefinite until they come up with something different?
As soon as possible. I mean, I would assume that U-Haul wants to move this as soon as possible as well.
Thank you. The next item is 2020 Joint and Crack Sealing Program. Joe Kuhlenbeck, building official.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. Bids were opened publicly on February 4th, 2020 for our 2020 Joint and Crack Sealing Program. Denler, Inc. submitted the most responsible and responsive bid for $81,700. We had a budget of $100,000. Staff recommends approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Went and a second by Alderman Burke. Alderman Parker.
Couple questions. One, this is half the price of the second most reasonable and responsive bid. Why?
In discussions with our team, the only thing we could come up with, there was one spec changed in this program relating to possibly removing or fully removing existing sealant to ensure a good bond with the new one. Denler was the only contractor that called. Maybe they had more clarification than others. That's really the only discrepancy we could see. Everything was bid based on quantities.
Okay.
Alderman Parker.
And to follow up, last year, I think it was last year or the year before, we had a lot of problems with our crack sealing
Sure.
company. Was that Denler?
No, that was a
Good.
Patriot something.
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure.
That's
It was
all I
not-
need
it
to
was
know. It's not Denver. And
No, it
it's
was
not like,
Denver.
okay. Finally, we have budgeted $100,000. The bid is $80,000. Are we going to spend up to the $100,000
The
or?
plan is to spend up to 100 as long as the contractor is able and able to maintain. Yeah, that is the plan, not to exceed, but to get as close as we can.
Thank you.
Alderman Went.
I guess to that point, if this unit price seems to be much better than what we were expecting, 80% of what we thought it would be, I guess I would encourage staff, if this group, get them out there early, and if they're doing a really good job, come back to us, and we may be interested in going over that 100,000 if we can get it at a good per unit price and get more done in the city, so.
That sounds great.
That's me personally, but I see a lot of head nods, so.
We'll be sure and do that. And if you don't mind, we don't mind if they leave in July and August, because obviously when it's hot, the cracks are at their narrowest. It's not the best time to do the most of it, but we'll evaluate where they're at, and if we can get them back as it starts to cool off and we need more money appropriated, we'll come back.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. The next item is also Joe, 2020 Seal Coat Program.
Bids were opened publicly on February 18th for the 2020 Seal Coat Program. Brandt Construction had submitted the most responsible and responsive bid. Bids did come in over budget. We are clear with our contractor. We will not exceed our budgeted amount. Staff recommends approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Parker, a second by Alderman Went. Is there any discussion? Alderman Went.
Along those same lines, do we have any idea why this is 40% higher than what we had originally thought?
Again, it was bid quantity, so whether it was oil prices, chip prices, not really sure where our numbers came or how we got them different, but it was, again, we did our best at the time, and price of materials changed.
Follow-up?
Yeah, and I guess to that, do you have a feel for with petroleum prices dropping so much that it might not be advantageous to maybe rebid? Is that?
That's a possibility. I don't know, I personally don't know enough about the commodities that are used here to know if prices are gonna go down. I know in general, when we bid things early, we get better unit prices. One, the contractor is available, and two, they kind of lock in a price that they feel they're comfortable with. I don't know if going out to rebid would be advantageous or not.
Alderman Berg?
First question is, so then we are paying them $100,000, correct?
100 max.
Okay. And then the second thing, who would know if it's advantageous for us to go back out and do the bid?
I could definitely consult with our engineering team.
Okay.
And they would have a better idea. I don't know, I really don't know where they come up with those unit prices to begin with, where they budget from. Maybe past experience and historical numbers, but
Mayor, is this something that perhaps we can ask you to bring back to us next week and after you consult with our engineers and bring it back? Are we on a time frame on this?
we're not on an extreme timeline, but we wouldn't want to push it back too far. I know we kind of pushed to get it on tonight because the MFT funds it's important, imperative for us to get it back to the state. So I could definitely ask the team and maybe come up with a better answer, but I don't know even if their answer is advantageous, if we have enough time to do that, to get it back to them, to get the projects done and ready to go in a timely manner. That there might be more wrinkles to it than just the unit price when it comes to rebidding.
How long does it take to rebid on?
Public notice is 10 days.
It would be no less than 10 days, yeah. Because we have a little advertising time in advance of that.
Thank you. Are you making a motion to table?
Yeah, I think I'll make a motion to table and ask that the staff come back to us next week with the, how advantageous that would be for us, and then I guess put it out for bid. I know we're gonna probably lose 7 days on it, but if they feel it's advantageous, tomorrow, if you talk to them tomorrow and they say, yes, it's advantageous, then you'll start the 10 days and go out from there.
To start a rebid?
Yeah, the rebid process, rather than lose the 7 days till our next meeting, and then,
Let me think about that. I'm gonna ask Dirk. Dirk, can we, until we take an action on this, can we rebid this?
So the motion is just a table, and so then we're gonna report back next week. There are a couple things we can do. One, we can find out if it'd be more advantageous, all things considered, including the seizure of the MFT funds, to rebid. So they'll report on that. The other thing we can do is you can always go to the lowest putative, responsible and responsive bidder and see if you can negotiate to get something closer to what our budget number was. You can ask them, in light of the oil prices reducing and all the rest, can you revise your price lower? So you can also go to the person you're going to award to and ask that person individually. And then you can also consult with engineering. So all we're doing tonight is tabling, bringing it back, and then whether it's advantageous, that's got to consider all the factors, not just the oil price, but all the factors you alluded to this evening for staff. So a motion to table will allow both of those things to happen.
So in answer to your question, it would have to come back. We couldn't start that process again until you acted then next week.
Right, you'd have to reject the bids before you could start rebid.
okay.
But you can talk to the lowest.
Alderman Witt?
Point of information, can we have that conversation if we vote to move it forward? Because we still have votes next
No,
week.
You accept.
But that's just at committee of the whole. So could we do that? I just don't want to put them a week behind if we wind up running into this issue with the MFT. But in the interim, between our first reading at council, even if we've accepted it here,
Well, move it forward, subject to that discussion.
Okay. I think that might be the better
So
way.
can I rescind my pulling the?
I don't think you're gonna get a second.
Oh, perfect,
Is
okay.
there a second for a table? Okay. So, yeah, the table motion fails. So we're considering the motion that's on the table, which is to approve and move forward.
With the direction to talk with the lowest bidder to consider current prices.
How do
Can
we
you say that
incorporate
again?
that into the motion? The motion already exists.
Who made the motion?
Alderman Parker did.
Actually.
Alderman Parker made the motion and
Yeah.
Alderman Wentz second.
But
Do you
it's,
accept that amendment?
And that was exactly what I meant when I made the motion.
that was clarification to the original
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah.
I was trying to get us through this quicker.
It's an actual amendment, and so if the mover accepts the amendment and the person who seconded it.
The mover accepts the amendment.
And the
So now it's an
seconder.
amended motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amended motion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Wow, it's getting kind of muddy today.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bomb Squad Memorandum of Understanding, Chief Golf.
Good evening. Hopefully this doesn't blow up. I had to, right? Low hanging fruit. I'm sorry. So tonight before you, Your Honor, City Council, I have the Bomb Squad Memorandum of Understanding. The FBI would like to enter into this agreement with the Quad Cities Bomb Squad, the Peoria Police Bomb Squad, the Illinois Secretary of State Police Bomb Squad, the University of Illinois Champaign Police Bomb Squad, and the Southern Illinois University Carbondale Police Bomb Squad. I have one officer that's assigned to the Rock Island County or the Quad Cities Bomb Squad. And so this will formalize the process and the duties, responsibilities, and procedures under the FBI. Will also give them deputization authority under the FBI when they're working on weapons of mass destruction or mitigating these types of explosive devices. So staff recommends approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Berg, a second by Alderman Williams. Is there any discussion on this item? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. The next item is Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification Amendment. Chief Galt.
Well, I have to ask for forgiveness here. We made a mistake. As you notice, this is coming back to you. When we submitted the equitable sharing agreement to the government, we were notified that we were $585 off. So worked with finance, and we were able to find that there was a, how do you say, scrivener's error, if you will. It was journaled incorrectly. So bringing that back to you to fix that error of $585 and resubmit the agreement.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Waldron, a second by Alderman Parker. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Chief. I do not believe we have any other this evening. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we're going to close out of the committee of the whole and go into the council agenda. Will we be having an invocation?
No, we will not.
There'll be no invocation, but we will have a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Williams,
Present.
Parker,
Present.
Wentz,
Present.
Potter, I'm sorry, Moyer,
Present.
Schoonmaker,
Present.
Waldron,
Present.
Berg.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole and Council meeting minutes of February 25th, 2020, and March 7th, 2020. The appointment made during Committee of the Whole on March 10th, 2020, and the January financial report. Resolutions. Council Bill 1014-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with 5 Cities Construction Company for project number 1332, 2020 alley reconstruction in the amount of $67,928.55. Council Bill 1015-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Centennial Contractors of the Quad Cities Incorporated for project number 1334, 2020 patching program in the amount of $1,476,700. Council Bill 1016-2020, a resolution authorizing the approval of a resolution for maintenance under the Illinois Highway Code for Motor Fuel Tax, Section 20-00000-00 GM, in the amount of $520,000. Council Bill 1017-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Precision Pavement Markings Incorporated for motor fuel tax section 20-00000-00 GM 2020 pavement marking program in the amount of $174,522. Council Bill 1018-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor, interim public works director, and city clerk to execute and attest to an agreement for professional engineering services with G. Walt Hamilton Associates Incorporated for on-call traffic engineering and transportation planning consulting services. Council Bill 1019-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Walter D. Laud Incorporated for motor fuel tax section 20-00000-03 GM 2020 inlet and catch basin replacement program in the amount of $118,800.30. Council Bill 1020-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and appropriate city staff to make application to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for the 2021 IDNR Bicycle Path Grant Program in the amount of $200,000 to construct a sidewalk, ramps, and related improvements in the city of Moline, and authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and appropriate city staff to do all things necessary to prepare and submit said grant application, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to complete and execute the Bike Path Grant Program Resolution of Authorization. Council Bill 1021-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and appropriate city staff to execute and attest to any and all required documentation related to the statewide planning and research program grant application in the Illinois Department of Transportation in the amount of $160,000 to develop a form-based code for the downtown Moline area, and authorizing the mayor, city clerk, and appropriate city staff to do all things necessary to prepare and submit said grant application. Council Bill 1022-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor, chief of police, and city clerk to execute and attest to a memorandum of understanding between the Illinois National Guard Counter-Drug Task Force and the City of Moline Police Department, setting forth the policies, procedures, and guidelines for the deployment of Illinois National Guard Counter-Drug Task Force personnel to the Moline Police Department in support of drug-related law enforcement. Council Bill 1023-2020, a resolution authorizing the mayor, chief of police, and city clerk to execute and attest to a memorandum of understanding between the United States Secret Service and the Moline Police Department, setting forth the procedures and responsibilities of both parties for the reimbursement of certain overtime costs and other expenses pursuant to 31 U.S.C. 9703. Council Bill 1024-2020, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a BC 1500 15-inch brush chipper with Tier 4 final engine and winch from Vermeer Midwest, East Moline, Illinois, in the amount of $69,496. Council Bill 1025-2020, a resolution authorizing the purchase of an SC 382 37 horsepower stump cutter and TLR 33 trailer from Vermeer Midwest, East Moline, Illinois, in the amount of $32,241. Council Bill 1026-2020, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2020 compact track loader from Martin Equipment, Rock Island, Illinois, in the amount of $48,402.13.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Parker and a second by Alderman Nguyen. Roll call, please.
Alderman Berg.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
Schoonmaker.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
That motion carries.
Non-consent agenda, first reading ordinances. Council Bill 3005-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Article 6, Division 2, Administrative Hearing Procedure from Public Safety Employee Benefit Claims by amending Sections 2-6200 and 2-6201D and by enacting one new section 2-6202 pertaining to the same subject matter. Council Bill 3006-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 Police of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 26-2113, manner of amending this article to remove the requirement that any amendment of Chapter 26, Article 2 of the Moline Code of Ordinances be published by newspaper publication. Council Bill 3007-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 Police of the Moline Code of Ordinances, Section 26-2304, police probationary period to modify the probationary period for newly hired officers pursuant to the Illinois FOP Labor Council Agreement. Council Bill 3008-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 31 Taxation of the Moline Code of Ordinances by enacting one new Article 12, Cannabis Retailers Occupation Tax, to impose a tax pursuant to the Municipal Cannabis Retailers Occupation Tax Law on persons engaged in the business of selling adult-use cannabis. Council Bill 3009-2020, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 Administration of the Moline Code of Ordinances by repealing Section 2-3204 in its entirety and acting in lieu thereof one new Section 2-3204, Assistant City Administrator, and by enacting one new Section 2-3205, Additional Personnel, which shall contain the text repealed from Section 2-3204. Council Bill 4006-2020, a special ordinance amending the City of Moline's policy entitled Policy Prohibiting Sexual Harassment to add an annual training requirement and to adopt a procedure for handling complaints of sexual harassment made by one elected official against another elected official. And that is all I have this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Jane. Do we have any council business this evening? Alderman Williams' side? Alderman Moyer's side?
Nothing.
I have a couple of things that I wanted the council to consider. One thing is the way that we handle our credit card fees. So currently, the city absorbs the credit card fees into whatever organization the charges are associated with. So the Parks Department would absorb if someone is signing up for some program through the Parks Department, or if water bill is being paid, then the Water Department and that fund would absorb that cost. And so the concern is that it's, a lot of other governments have gone to sharing those fees with the person that chooses to use the credit card. We have some other means of payment of those bills and programming, so they can pay with a direct transfer from their checking account, they can pay with a check, they can pay with cash. So there's ways to avoid that fee. But that fee is costing the city about $120,000 a year. And so I wanted to get a sense from council if there was an appetite to ask staff to look at what our alternatives would be, other than to invest our taxpayers' money in paying those fees for other taxpayers. So one concern that has been brought up is that perhaps someone that is having difficulty paying their bills would want to use a credit card as a way to leverage that. But the other argument is that people use credit cards because they get cash back. And so then you're funding that cash back. Other taxpayers are funding that cash back because we're absorbing those costs into our overall expense structure. So I just want to get a sense from the council what your thoughts were, if that was something that you think that staff should be relooking at. Alderman Waldron.
I would like staff to take a look at the alternatives, what will we do, and specific to areas. I mean, does it make sense for, as an example, concession stands out at Green Valley Park versus paying your water and sewer bills? So not just water, sewer bills, the emphasis that would be everywhere where credit cards are taken. But I think it's a good idea to review.
Alderman Parker?
Are you looking for a motion on that?
I don't, if you, it might make sense just to give a motion to direct staff to investigate and bring it back to us.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion by Alderman Parker and a second by Alderman Berg. Is there any discussion on that? We'll need a roll call.
Alderman Berg,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Went,
Aye.
Moyer,
Aye.
Schoonmaker,
Aye.
Waldron,
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
That motion carries. So we'll be looking for that, kind of, you could give us a sense when we'd be ready to come back, but we'd be open to it as soon as you can. Thank you. The other council business that I wanted to bring up is our previous discussion about the Regional Funding Authority. We had talked about it kind of casually, and it's not something that's within our authority to approve or disapprove, but I had previously looked for some feedback from you. I sent out some information about some changes that have happened in the legislation, and I don't know if anybody has any questions for me on that, but I kind of wanted to walk through it real quick. Like, there are some things where the airport has been removed from the legislation, so considerations of them bringing that underneath this regional funding authority would be removed. The purposes, which was more of a generic reference, so if a referendum came and it referenced a specific project that was associated with a purpose, that money could be transferred to a different project associated with that same purpose. The legislation now restricts it to that specific project. The specific project has a cap. The Regional Funding Authority would give up the opportunity to bond, so they couldn't accept debt independent. There was a prohibition on elected officials being the appointees for that authority. That prohibition has been removed. It was also prohibited that if anybody had been an elected official in the last 2 years, they'd be prohibited, but that's been removed as well. So that's kind of the summary of some of the changes. I feel much more comfortable with the legislation as it is proposed right now. And I just want to get your feedback from the council because I think that's important, what you guys are thinking about it. Alderman Witt.
There's the provision where they took out the bonding authority, but they still retain the mortgage authority. So is the idea that that way they can only borrow as much as what their collateral is versus bonding for more than what they might be paying for?
I'm not sure
Okay.
if there is that sophisticated of a thought of how they could leverage the mortgaging authority.
Okay. That's just, I mean, if you take out the bonding, but you allow the mortgaging, you're still allowing them to leverage.
So the authority would go
Quicker.
in without any assets. So I think that the only thing that they would have to mortgage would be an asset. So they would have had to acquire the asset with the funding authority's money, I would think.
Well, but if they've got a line of income through a tax revenue, they could go to a bank
They
and
could mortgage
say,
the future.
yeah, and
For a project.
Yeah.
Mortgage the collateral.
And-
related to the
Is
project.
that a concern for this council?
well, I think it's a concern if we took out the bonding authority, but you leave that in there. I'm not sure. It's slightly different, but it really doesn't reduce the amount of debt that they could take on. I guess up into whatever the full amount of
cap,
their
yeah.
cap
So
is.
they'll
But
list the
that's what they
caps.
would be doing with the bond. I mean, nobody's gonna give them a bond beyond what their cap would be anyway, so. It seems a little counterintuitive if that's what we're trying to avoid.
So what I can do is propose that, if that is a showstopper for the council to
Or
support.
that, some explanation back of like, well, this is why we need it versus a bonding authority, but I'm trying to rack my brain on what that would be. Because I don't know, so, yeah, I think I've got concern about it.
Is that a concern that's shared by the other council members? Alderman Waldron.
Earlier say it doesn't matter. We're not really voting on it anyway, are we?
Well, what they're interested in is making sure that the community is supported. So our legislators will approach the state. So this authority will be determined at the state level. So it'll be our representatives and our senators that will move forward. And they do not want to pursue legislation that impacts our communities without our community's support. So that's why we're having this conversation as representatives of the community. Do we want to move forward with that authority? Nothing will happen. There will be no tax or any user fees or anything applied within their authority without additional referendum specific to the projects that they are considering. Does anyone else have any comments?
I just really struggle with, I mean, I don't think the referendum would probably pass, but I struggle with backing something that we don't have any idea what they're going to do with it, what their plans are. We've heard rumors of flood walls and different things that certainly wouldn't benefit us. And we have a heavy concentration of retail. We're gonna get, our taxes are gonna go up, which may be the tipping point that limits sales that now go to the internet instead of local sales. I think we're passing a burden along that's gonna be heavier on Moline than on quite a few of the other cities. And especially the way Iowa shares sales tax, it won't be impactful to the Iowa cities because it's shared statewide. Moline sales tax is Moline sales tax, and I think we have the most to lose in this situation. We should be very careful in how we monitor it.
And I agree, I think that's a reasonable concern. My thought is now that the legislation is clean enough that if it were to come to referendum, our voters would understand the situation. I was concerned about it before because it was quite loose, and so I think that has moved out of legislation. So now it's buttoned up enough that if it comes to referendum, then that debate will be the big debate that we have at that time. So my position is I'm comfortable with legislation now. I understand your concerns, and I think that they're reasonable concerns. Does anybody else have any comments? Is that a concern? So if, Alderman Moyer.
I guess I do. I was reading in there, and I think there was a limit to 1% of tax money received can be used for administrative costs. And so I was curious, since they have no other assets, who's going to fund the initial administration? Who's going to fund in excess of 1% of the taxing money? I assume that they're going to have a large public campaign to try to get out a positive vote. Are they going to be coming back to the cities and asking for contributions, or is the chamber going to fund this, or have they talked about that?
I haven't heard any funding source for that. I think it depends on what the initiative is. So if there was, something that an organization supported, they could finance the campaign for that. My understanding is the referendum will be defined by the appointees on the authority. So we would have one appointee on the authority, and there'd be 8 total. Alderman Parker.
Well, I share Alderman Schoonmaker's concern that it's basically, we'd be saying, please take our money out of the city of Moline and putting it somewhere else in something that we may not have a lot of say over. Although it's better the way it is written now, I totally agree with you. That's just an underlying concern that I have, because we have so many projects that need to be funded in the city that are all funded by, because all of our property taxes go to public safety pensions and a little bit here and there, but everything else is so dependent upon user fees and sales tax that if we see a drop in our sales because the tax is too high, it's going to start really affecting the services that we can provide our residents here in our own city. Not to get too parochial, but I mean, we kind of have to protect our own backyard a little bit too.
Does anybody else have any feedback for me? Is anybody in support of it? So I think I settled in support of it. I think I'm in support of it. And the reason I'm in support of it is I think that it gives us an opportunity to work as a region for things that are truly impactful to the region, that we can gather together and support. I understand the concerns, and I'd like the council's support on this, but if you're not there, I understand.
So
Alderman Parker.
what kind of projects are we talking about that would be a regional benefit to us, even if it's not located in the city? What would that be? I'm not that globally thinking to figure out what that would be.
So one project that I think would be impactful is pre-kindergarten education. So it would be an initiative that would support all of our pre-K students throughout the Quad City area. And it's impactful, and it would be a ground changer if we were able to fund something like that as a community. So other things that have been brought up are flood mitigation efforts, civic centers, recreational things, museums, the zoo, that type of work. So it impacts Rock Island County and Scott County. So those are the two footprints that would be taxed either through sales tax, real estate tax, or user fees. Alderman Schoonmaker.
That, most of that made me feel worse about it. We already fund our schools through our property tax, and we do fund pre-K, and I understand it probably would be expanded. We also in Moline carry some burdens that are tied to the airport that the region benefits from, but we don't get any help supporting the airport. So if they want to have a regional push, maybe they can help us support the airport that we've, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a good thing that we have the airport. It's a good thing that we carry, but we do carry additional costs related to that. You know, another civic center I think would be a terrible idea for Moline because it's going to take some things away from this civic center. It's going to create competition that maybe, you know, there's not as much going on here as there currently is. It's very successful right now. We'd hate to see that, you know, lose 5%, 10% of its activity because there's a new sports arena that takes all the hockey team and basketball and whatever, and our downtown businesses don't get the meals and whatnot out of it. So I hear you and I understand, but I nothing there made me feel better about it. Made me actually harden me against it a little more.
Would this council entertain allowing advocates for the legislation to come and speak directly to you?
Absolutely.
So how about we do
I
it
think it'd
that
be really
way?
good for them to hear our concerns too.
Then let's do that. I'll move forward with that. I will invite them to join us for our next council meeting and provide an informational so that we understand what the big picture is that they're seeing that maybe y'all are missing a little bit. So that's it. How about anybody on staff? Anything for the council? Yes, Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully you saw it in your season tonight. I left a copy of the library's 2019 annual report in the card that detailed the outcomes from our previous strategic plan that concluded in 2019. There's a lot of good statistics, highlights, some that we're really proud of. If you have questions about this.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Alderman Parker.
I do have one thing I forgot to mention. Last week, Jonathan from the Moline Housing Authority met with Chief Galt and Captain Johnson regarding video. The Housing Authority at all of our locations, including our location down here near Floreciente, has recently finished installing I think it was about $250,000 worth of cameras and software equipment to be able to help with safety and all these things. Chief Galt has agreed to integrate that into the police department as well, so that they have some real-time look-ins as to what's going on, and can also have access to video to help in their work also. So big shout out to the Moline Housing Authority as well as the police department. It's really great to see two different government agencies working closely together for the betterment of the city. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks for setting that up. It was a great meeting, I thought.
Yep.
I think JD has something for us.
Just real quick, Your Honor, last fall at the end of leaf season, Rod came and talked to you about the possibility of if you wanted to do some free bag collection this year. So he's going to be out next week, so just be thinking about it. I'm going to come next Tuesday and ask you if that's something you want to consider doing this spring. So I just wanted to plant that seed so you can be thinking about it.
Actually, I've had residents ask about if we're going to send the sweepers out again. And I'm like, oh no.
I had somebody knock on my door this weekend and said, since we're not plowing, can we put the vacuums back on?
That's exactly it.
How much salt do we use?
Oh, boy, that's a broad question. I don't know if he's figured that yet.
No, I have not.
Do we got plenty left?
We're doing really good.
Good. Fantastic. That'll help
Here's
our
to
budget
it.
this year.
Yes.
You treat it, do whatever you gotta do.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that's all we have for miscellaneous business. Alderman Berg, did you have something?
Your
for
Honor,
us?
I make a motion that the council convene an executive session for the purpose of discussion of review of executive session minutes 5 ILCS 120/2C21, appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees 5 ILCS 120/2C1, and property acquisition 5 ILCS 120/2C5.
Second.
We have a motion by Alderman Berg and a second by Alderman Wendt. Roll call, please.
Alderman Berg.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Went.
Aye.
Moyer.
Aye.
Schoonmaker.
Aye.
Waldron.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays.
That motion carries. Would you please clear the council chambers? Thank you.